Welcome to the Big Talk podcast, where we chat all things business and personal development related, totally unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Amanda Davies, and I'm here to help you transform into the leader you were born to be, stand apart from the competition, and most importantly, share your message with the world in a big, big way. Are you ready? Welcome once again to Big Talk. So hello, welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast. I'm excited to be here with you as always. So first thing that I wanted to say, the sound quality might not be as great for this episode and probably for the next episode as well. I'm actually on holidays at the moment. I'm in the Canary Islands, so I'm not in my usual recording studio with all of my really awesome mic and all that sort of stuff. But this is a really big part about how I work, which is actually when the inspiration comes through, I just kind of want to just jump on and share it. And so for me, what's more important is that I just get this message to you guys. And I'm not a huge planner, actually. I'm not one of those people that schedules months worth of podcast episodes in advance and all of that. I'm very much kind of tapped in, I think, intuitively. And as I said, I really love to wait for that inspiration, because actually what I want to talk about today, I think, is really important. And it's kind of based off the back of this recent launch that I've just come out of, which is, I'm sure you all know that I've just launched the summer class of my Psychodynamic Coach Academy, or the PCA. So we have some amazing new people who have said yes to becoming psychodynamic coaches, which is really exciting. But as a result of this launch, it means that I really got to speak to a lot of people about, what is shadow work? What is psychodynamics exactly? And not just sort of what is it, but how can it really help me grow my business as well? And yes, the Psychodynamic Coach Academy is all about helping people become certified coaches and all of that amazing stuff with certifications and qualifications and all of that. But the other thing that happens to people when they come through the academy is that their business really tends to take off. And so what I've noticed, and I've kind of known this for years now that I've been doing this work, is that the more sincere inner work we do, the more sincere shadow work we do, the deeper we go in terms of understanding the different competing aspects of our psyche, aka psychodynamics. It's like actually we have the opportunity to really create change at a much deeper level within ourselves. And some of those things, fears and insecurities and limiting beliefs and all of that stuff that we've done all the mindset work on, actually start to resolve themselves. And so naturally people's businesses start to kind of take off as a result of doing this work. And so this was kind of the reason why I wanted to pull this episode together today, because after having lots of conversations these past few weeks, as I said, off the back of the launch, really being out there in my community, I know that this is a really big question that people have, which is actually, how can we really start to use psychodynamics and shadow work to kind of align this purpose and prosperity piece in our business? How can we really start to elevate our businesses using the power of these tools? Because wherever you're at in your business, so just say, for example, you are brand new, don't even have a business yet, but you know that you're wanting to become a coach, you're enrolled in the PCA, for example, or another coaching certification, you're training up and you're doing all of this great stuff, you're right in the starting blocks. Or just say you're wanting to hit your first 6 figures in business, or maybe your next 6 figures. Shadow work and psychodynamics really are incredible tools for you to really kind of get beyond whatever that kind of upper limit is, whatever that ceiling is that you keep kind of batting against, and actually help you go to that next level. All right. I've seen it in my own business as a multi-6-figure business owner. I've seen it with my clients who are just kind of getting started in their business too. And so this is what I really wanted to unpack with you guys today. Okay. So get a pen ready, take some notes. You know that I offer loads of value in these podcasts too. So I really want to kind of guide you through this and kind of unpack this sort of, how do we start to align our purpose and prosperity piece? How can we use shadow work and psychodynamics to really get into this? All right. So thing that I want to do first off is just kind of step back a little bit. And I want to kind of understand if any of this feels familiar to you first off, because I think it's really important to understand where you might be at and to have that kind of awareness around, oh, actually, what's kind of not quite working, or maybe I've got a bit of a suspicion about something playing out here. So I think it's really important that we kind of take a bit of an inventory around where you are currently and what you might be experiencing. And then obviously I'm going to share some advice and some ways forward after this. Okay. But one of the biggest things that I've noticed that people are kind of up against in terms of going to this next level in their business is this sort of disconnection piece. So this is the first thing that I want to talk about. Disconnection can look like several different things, all right? But what I've found mostly with people is that it's this kind of feeling where they struggle to genuinely express themselves in their business. All right. And I remember going through this too, where when I started my business, I was all about the strategy. I'm all about absolutely the purpose piece as well. But I hadn't really and fully embraced the depths and strengths of my intuition, my spiritual abilities and gifts. Okay. I hadn't really gone there. And so I always felt like there was part of me that was holding back a little bit. I felt a little bit disconnected from the full truth of who I was and who I am. All right. So this kind of holding back on this genuine self-expression, maybe not saying the things that you really want to say. You don't want to offend people. You don't want to polarize people. Or perhaps there's this disconnection around your clarity. Actually, I don't feel clear on what I'm here to do. I don't feel clear on what my message is. I don't feel clear around what the offers are that I can create and share with people. And so typically what happens is that what comes off the back of that is this lack of visibility. All right. Maybe you're showing up and ticking the boxes of visibility. I often talk about that. Yay, good for you. You've posted twice a week, tick, tick. But actually, there's something that you're holding back on. So there's this visibility piece that I often find is very prevalent for people who are feeling disconnected. And and so with this visibility piece then and this disconnection, quite often what comes are these limitations around, who we are as a brand, that people as a brand, obviously a personal brand, or if you have a bigger company, what is that unique brand? What's that brand signature? What's that brand identity? Because you're not clear, because you're feeling disconnected, because you're not showing up and getting visible, sometimes that creates frustration and confusion around what you really stand for as a company. And quite often I see this with people who are very multi-passionate and multifaceted and multidimensional. It's like, well, I've been told that I just need to be one thing. How do I show up and do that in my business? And therefore they're disconnected from all of those other incredible parts of themselves too. So there's this disconnection piece that often shows up, and that I'm going to share a little bit more in a minute about how shadow work and psychodynamics can really help you with that. But the second thing that I wanted to talk about is this self-sabotage as well, because this is another massive symptom that people feel before they go to that next level in their business. It's this self-sabotage that comes up. And, we can have done a lot of mindset work. I often talk about this, don't I? It's like, you can do all of the mindset work and the thought reversals and the affirmations and the reframes and all of the things and the thinking positive that you want. But have you ever noticed that you can set these goals, whether that's in your business, for example, you want to hit your first 10K month, or you want to launch your new program and you're feeling really excited about it. But then a week later, it's almost like the wind's gone from your sails. Okay, we find all of the excuses around why this isn't possible. Actually, it's not a great time now. We're coming up to summer holidays, and we start to take ourselves out and we start to talk ourselves out of these goals that actually felt so important to us just a week ago. We do this a lot with health goals and fitness goals and things like that too. We self-sabotage. And quite often, these unresolved shadow aspects of ourselves can manifest as self-sabotage, absolutely, but also as limiting beliefs. And so one of the difficulties with working with limiting beliefs, based on a lot of the work that's out there, is a lot of people try and tackle limiting beliefs from the place of the conscious mind. Okay, identify the limiting belief. Okay, so I think it's always a struggle to make money, for example, and then write down all of the ways that you can kind of reverse that belief. So actually almost kind of learn a new set of beliefs using your conscious mind, almost willing this new belief to take root in your psyche. And this is all well and good, and it has its place, and it can be really valuable. It can make you feel really good in the moment. But quite often, and I'd be really curious to know if this has happened with you, quite often we find ourselves slipping back into that old limiting belief over and over and over again, despite our best intentions to change it at the conscious level, right? We still find ourselves operating from that place of, I need to work hard to make money, or scarcity is everywhere. Money doesn't grow on trees, for example. But actually, what's happening is that typically there are some unresolved shadow aspects that have to do with prosperity and wealth and money that need to be resolved first. These shadow aspects sit within that subconscious layer of our psyche. These are things that are very young. These are constructs that typically took root a long, long time ago, usually before the age of 8. All right. They typically come from a lot of wounded inner child stuff. They come from a lot of the stuff around psychic split. So a couple of episodes ago, I spoke a lot about the psychic split and how that creates the shadow, all right, due to these adverse experiences that we have typically as children, whether that's lived adverse experiences or whether we've witnessed that in others, for example. So we split off these aspects of ourselves and we put them deep into our subconscious. And so typically, if we have limiting beliefs, they don't just operate at that conscious level, they're actually embedded deep into our subconscious, which is why things like thought reversers and all that sort of stuff is great, but doesn't really get to the root cause of what's going on, okay? The other thing that I'd kind of wrap up into this banner are things like procrastination, feeling like an imposter, it's being a perfectionist, all right? Look at all of these labels that we love to cling on to. And actually, here's the thing about things like imposter syndrome or perfectionism. Quite often, what I find with my clients and graduates that come through the PCA and private clients too, these are very kind of twisted, to be honest, twisted yet convenient labels for our ego to hang on to, because they keep us in our comfort zone, don't they? So it's very easy to say, oh, gosh, I'm just suffering from a lot of imposter syndrome at the moment. I'm such a perfectionist. That's why I need to, go through 500 iterations of my bloody website before I turn it live. So we do all of this sort of stuff. A lot of this is around not just what's in our shadow, but sort of the opposing force of our shadow, which is our ego, our conscious mind too. Our ego is the thing that really does have a heavy investment in keeping us in our comfort zone. So it will also construct aspects, ego parts and aspects, such as the imposter, such as the one that's the perfectionist, in order to keep us in our comfort zone. And so what's required is for us to then go into the shadow and into the subconscious mind to reclaim those opposite parts, those shadow parts that don't feel like an imposter, that are okay with being messy and imperfect. So this is why, excuse me, I talk a lot about this in the PCA. We have these two, typically there's a lot more, but these two primary opposing forces in our psyche, our ego, our conscious mind, and our shadow. We also have lots of others too, but for simplicity, I kind of want to keep it at this. And these two forces typically are at odds with each other all the time. Our conscious mind can want one thing that wants to slam the brakes on by telling us that we're an imposter, but actually what's in the shadow is the part of us that does feel qualified, the part of us that feels divinely guided, that's ready to show up. And so what we need to do is work with both of these parts. We need to work with the ego, but we also need to go in and reclaim and make it safe for us to welcome in the part of us that is divinely guided, that doesn't feel like an imposter, that knows that she belongs or he belongs, okay? So this is how psychodynamics works, all right? It's about quite often mediating and negotiating between these different parts of us to bring them together into a cohesive, aligned way so we can actually get on and do the work that we're supposed to be blooming doing in the world, right? So, when you look at self-sabotage and perfectionism and procrastination and imposter syndrome and this kind of whole band of stuff that so many of us suffer with, it's really obvious to see why we then struggle to fulfill our potential in business, because we kind of play at this level of being caught in the web of the ego stories, being caught in the web of the emotions and the fear that comes up with that as well. Okay, so getting a handle on this self-sabotagey type piece is really important when it comes to going to this next level in our business, and to really look at what's your unique flavor of self-sabotage too. The other thing that I've noticed about people who are struggling to kind of elevate their business, either getting it off the ground or getting to that next level, is when it comes to building relationships. And so what I mean by this is sometimes unresolved shadow aspects of ourselves can really influence our interpersonal relationships and dynamics between either us and our team, obviously us and our partner and our families. That's a whole other podcast. I'm speaking mostly about business, but even our clients as well, our audience also. So it can really create challenges around connecting authentically to people, building those healthy relationships as well. And typically what I've found with people who struggle with this piece specifically is that they can really suffer from a lack of boundaries. Okay. And I definitely used to do this too, where I'd be available 24/7. Doesn't matter, message me on a Sunday, message me at like 10 o'clock at night, and I'll get back to you. All right. So this was my whole MO, and this has basically been a part of my MO my entire life. Okay. And this is like a huge shadow aspect that I needed to resolve within myself. Because the shadow aspect wasn't so much that I'd be on and responding and available. It was like, well, what was driving that? What was that ego part of me? And then what was that shadow part of me that was contributing to this behavior? So, just to give you a little backstory on this, because I think many of you will be able to relate to it. And I spoke about this recently on Instagram as well, which is around parentified children. So, I was heavily parentified as a child. I spoke a lot about that in a recent post on Instagram. And I spoke about how when you're parentified, this can really show up as a role that essentially you play throughout your entire life. And there's a lot of reasons. This is like total sidebar, by the way, but I think it will really add flavor to this piece. Parentified children are often parentified. And what I mean by that, sorry, just to rewind, is parentified children are essentially children who need to take on adult roles and responsibilities before they're willing and ready to do so, either because a parent is ill or absent or not available in some way, or perhaps you were just born to emotionally immature parents. Okay. Whatever the case may be, you basically needed to grow up too fast. Um, and parentified basically means that you had to step in and do some of those adult roles, take on some of the responsibilities, and all of that sort of stuff. All right. So, what happens is that role sticks because what you learn from a very young age is that your needs and your desires don't really matter. Okay. It's all about looking after another. It's all about actually you deriving your sense of value and worthiness and lovability from how useful you are. So you can start to see that you begin to build this entire identity, this persona. This is another part of our psyche, okay, that comes into play here. Our persona is that kind of outward mask that we wear. This is what people see when they interact with us. Our ego is a little bit different, okay? But essentially, it's like this is the thing that people see. This is where we derive our value. People can see that we're a useful, intelligent, resourceful person. We pride ourselves on this. Okay? And this becomes a great thing. This is the thing that will get us promotions. This is the thing that will help us launch businesses. This is the thing that will help keep clients happy until one day it isn't. And it isn't okay for you to continue playing this role either. Because typically what's in your shadow, remember the shadow being those concealed and repressed and denied parts of us that have fallen unconscious, are things like, the carefree inner child, your secret inner rebel, the one that didn't have to be so responsible all the time. So you can quickly see that shadow work is actually as much about reclaiming those light and bright and carefree and working with the wisdom of those parts, as it is about dealing with the heaviness of the roles we sometimes carry from our persona and from an ego perspective too. I hope that makes sense. So bringing it back to this whole idea of working with other people in our business and building relationships, or working with clients and putting boundaries in place and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, if we're operating from this old role, this old identity of my worth is based on how useful I am, our boundaries are naturally going to be pretty freaking sloppy in our business, because we allow our boundaries to essentially be violated. We allow it. Okay, because we are so ingrained in this role. We derive worth from it. We derive value from it ourselves. Okay. So there's like a whole other bit, and I might even do another entire podcast episode on parentification and being unheard and unseen as children, because I think this is a really important topic that affects so many people. But for the purposes of this podcast today, just to kind of bring this back onto track, quite often I see challenges in building relationships with people who are struggling to get to this next level, that something's always taking them out. And, whether that's just, as I said, dodgy boundaries, okay, perhaps issues around trust and communication as well. And all of this sort of stuff, when you pull it all together, can ultimately kind of hinder partnerships, team dynamics, collaboration, and then therefore it limits the growth and expansion of your business. So you can see how these very external things, this limited growth in your business, this lack of showing up and getting visible, this lack of understanding what your unique value proposition is and building community with your audience, it's not just about having better strategies in those areas. All of it can be traced back to this psychodynamic nub, this nub of this is the root, this is why it actually isn't quite working. And this is, again, going back to my graduates of the PCA so far, as they go through the academy and they go off and they either launch their business or take their business to the next level, quite often they start to see radical improvements in their revenue, in terms of the clients they're signing on board, things like just showing up and being visible and feeling like ease with that, because actually they've reclaimed some of these shadow aspects and they've done the work to really deal with the root cause of why that wasn't working in the first place. All right. So you can see all the testimonials on my site around people who have actually quit their job and actually started their business, and they're full-time now in their business. They've replaced their salary. I've also had people go through the academy who are smashing their sales calls. People who used to shy away from discovery calls now, like, literally enrolling everybody that comes onto a discovery call because they're no longer being driven by limiting beliefs and fears that used to hold them back. This is the freaking power of this work. And the next thing that I wanted to kind of talk about here is difficulty in overcoming obstacles. So something that I've found with a lot of people who struggle with their businesses is that they kind of blow things out of proportion in terms of the size and scale of challenges or obstacles that come up. Right? I'm just going to say it straight. And I've definitely been here myself too, where it feels like, oh my God, Facebook didn't approve my ad. The freaking roof's falling in. It's that kind of stuff. It's this, someone said no, they're not ready to work with me. Oh my God, this means that this isn't the right time for me to be launching my business. Like, we catastrophize, okay? So rather than just seeing these as usual business obstacles, we see them as something that's like, oh my God, this is freaking the world's ending kind of thing, all right? And this is because quite often those shadow aspects of us hold these deep-seated fears and unresolved emotions, and yes, past traumas as well. So when we don't address these things, typically what happens is that they intensify challenges. They increase the impact and the emotional intensity of ordinary everyday obstacles. Everything feels a lot more intense. And quite often what I see is people start to struggle when it comes to navigating setbacks or adapting to changes. Like, for example, a few years ago when all of those iOS changes came in with Facebook, that changed drastically the marketing landscape and the way that we target people, the way we advertise, the way we retarget people, the way we build funnels, the way we set things up. People freaked out, okay? Because it's like, oh my God, and people's businesses folded off the back of that, because this ability to adapt to change and to navigate, I guess, perceived setbacks and to find creative solutions to problems, a lot of this comes when we can resolve some of those shadow and ego conflicts within us too. All right. So actually being able to overcome those hurdles and then go on to thrive is a really important part of this work also. And the last thing that I would say before I kind of get onto some of the forward-looking piece and some advice for you guys is this disconnection from intuition and higher guidance. Okay, when it comes to sort of elevating your business, if there are still some of these shadow aspects at play that are unresolved, this can typically really impede our access to our intuition and our higher spiritual guidance as well. We can find it really difficult to sort of tap into that, to trust that, to build that kind of self-trust around some of those niggles and nudges and guidance that are coming in that really should be driving a lot of our business decisions. We might stick with things. We see this in relationships too, don't we? It's like we stick with things, we stick with people longer than we probably should, because there are some unresolved dynamics at play within our own psyche. All right. Quite often, when we haven't done the work to integrate our shadow and to work with these disparate parts of us, what happens is that we rely a lot on logic, we rely a lot on strategy, we rely a lot on external validation as well, going back to that parentification thing as well. And typically what happens when we rely too much on the external, because that's what we've been taught, that's what we've been all conditioned into, let's be frank, that this is the stuff that matters, not your feelings, not your emotions, not your intuitive guidance. Oh, that's crap, right? This is what society tells us. And we're very much indoctrinated into it's all about logic and research and strategy. And oh, your business isn't working. You just need a better strategy. You need a different funnel. You need a membership model. No, you need a high ticket model. Da, 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 da. None of that shit matters. I mean, it does, but it's like, the root of this is about being able to rely on the valuable insights and intuitive niggles and nudges that guides you towards more alignment and successful outcomes in your business. Alignment is huge here. Because what I also see happening, and this is a big part of my client base too, is people have built a six-figure or a multi-six-figure business in some cases, but they've built it off the back of struggle and misalignment. And so they get to the point where they come to me and they're burnt out and frazzled, not because they're not making any money. Money's good. It's not as good as it could be if they're aligned, but it's like they're burnt out and frazzled because they're completely misaligned, because they haven't learned to trust their higher guidance and intuitive wisdom. People sometimes come to me because they feel like they've lost themselves. I was talking to a client recently who's kind of, I don't know, like built this sort of entire brand identity on being like the funnel girl in the business, like the funnel, the person that can build the amazing funnel and do all the tech and all this sort of stuff, which is amazing. And there are people that are gifted and should be doing that. But the problem with her is that she didn't feel aligned to that. She'd basically learned some of that methodology from her old coaches and mentors and courses, and then she'd sort of repackaged it and repurposed it as her own. And what was missing was her own freaking essence and her own wisdom and her own story and experience, and frankly, her personality. So it's like, this is kind of where it can lead you to, because unintegrated shadow aspects mean that we tend to doubt ourselves. We don't trust our higher guidance and wisdom. And this is a real problem when it comes to really creating a business, not just to pump out a bunch of widgets on the internet and make six figures, but this is a real problem when it comes to creating a business that's in alignment with our freaking soul and our purpose, and actually contributing to the planet as a way shower in this next age of consciousness, which I always talk about. And I've spoken about this from the beginning. This is what it's all about. These are the people that I work with. You're here to build a widget on the internet, great, knock yourself out. But I'm specifically talking to the people that are here to do incredible things. And people who are here to do incredible things cannot ignore their intuition. They cannot ignore their higher guidance. Okay. So caveat to all of this doesn't, of course, preclude strategy in the sense of, it doesn't exclude strategy, I should say. Strategy is still really important. I teach amazing strategies, six-figure strategies, but I know as sure as hell they won't work unless we do some of this work first. Okay. And this is kind of where I want to start focusing next in this podcast, around what are these kind of next steps and what's the advice on moving forward here? So if you find yourself struggling with any of this stuff and you're really struggling to elevate your business and get to that next level, you're like, oh my God, this is me, Amanda, everything that you're describing. Here are a couple of things that I want to share with you. And, a lot of this I've sort of shared as I've gone through each of those kind of core challenges that I've seen people face. Number one, and this is like the really obvious one, but it's the one that's actually overlooked the most, which is you've got to really embrace self-exploration. And I know that you're already a seeker. I know that you're already on this personal development journey. I know you're already on a spiritual path. But what I'm asking you to do is to look at the way you feel, hand on heart, hand on tummy. Where are those areas of misalignment in your business? Do that kind of quick gut check, that audit. Think about your offers, think about your brand, think about your message. Where are you feeling any contraction in your body? Where is the misalignment? Because I think there's something about acknowledging that, because this is the thing, and I think particularly as women, we do this, we push on through some of those areas of contracted sort of feeling and sensation. We do it in relationships, we overlook the red flags. Well, what are the red flags in your business? Okay, where are the red flags in your business? And start to highlight those and understand them and see them for what they are. And really looking at this and acknowledging that actually the results that you desire aren't stacking up with your current reality. I don't care how long you've been on the spiritual path for. I don't care how enlightened you think you are, with all due respect, okay? I don't care how much money you've made in your business. If you are not where you want to be or desire to be, your external world is matching up with your internal world. So there is something that needs to be peeled back and revealed at a much deeper level in order to ultimately step into and manifest the reality that you want. Okay. So embracing this self-exploration with humility as well, I think is really important. And being that eternal student around, where am I feeling contracted? Actually, let me look at the external results in my business and my life. Am I really where I want to be? And so starting to acknowledge and accept that there could be some underlying issues there, stuff that maybe you haven't looked at. Because let's face it, this journey of self-exploration is a lifelong journey. There are many, many multiple layers to all of this. And I think particularly if you're on this path of individuation and ascension as well, it's like we're always needing to engage in self-reflection to identify patterns and fears and limiting beliefs that are going to be holding us back. And so being open to exploring deeper shadow aspects, possibly learning about psychodynamics and these different parts of our psyche as well, and how they influence our emotions and our thoughts and our actions and our results. That's the first step. Very simple first step is literally close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, put your hand on your heart, hand on your belly, and just start to bring these elements of your business into your conscious awareness and notice how you feel. Where is the contraction? And let's start there. The other thing that I would say is some advice on this journey too, is to really be compassionate with yourself. Because I think as you go deeper, you can see that there is so much more depth and so many more layers that maybe haven't been explored. And I remember when I started to do sincere shadow work, I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I've been on a spiritual journey for 12 years and I have not got to the depths and to the layers that I got to with shadow work. Because here's the thing, quite often we either look for spiritual solutions to our problems. I spoke about this in a recent masterclass, actually. Quite often we look to spiritual solutions to solve our problems. But in doing that, we bypass the psychological pieces and even the somatic work that we also need to do in order to work through those challenges and heal those issues or solve those problems. Or we rely too much on the somatic or the psychological and we bypass or forget about the spiritual piece. And so this is the beauty of psychodynamics and psychospirituality and shadow work generally, is that it brings it all together. In the PCA, for example, I teach people a coaching framework that's based on all three of those: spirituality, okay, psychology, and somatics, because it's all of these things that come together to create true healing and transformation. And so going back to the self-compassion piece, I think and again, speaking from my own experience, I'm like, oh my God, what have I been doing for 12 years? What the fuck am I doing? So it's like, as you navigate these challenges, as you do the gut checks, as you realize there's still contraction, as you realize there are things in your life that aren't quite stacking up the way that you want them to be, just have a lot of self-compassion. Okay. Recognize that healing and growth is a journey. It's not a destination. I know you know that intellectually, but sometimes I think, particularly if we're quite driven, as well as like we want to get to the destination, wherever that is, but actually it's a journey. So I really want to kind of encourage you to practice a lot of self-care, self-compassion, and self-love as you go through this process and discover these parts of you. And look, I'm going to be really honest. The third thing I'm going to say is shadow work is very, very difficult to do alone. And the reason is because we can't see what we can't see. So typically what we need to do is like the myth of Medusa. Sometimes I talk about this. I quite like this. Where, Medusa is in her cave, right? And Perseus is sent to slay Medusa, right? Poor old Medusa, by the way. But anyway, this is a whole other thing. But so he's sent to slay her, but he can't look at her directly. Otherwise, he'll turn to stone. It's same with the shadow. It won't turn to stone. But you can't look at it directly. You kind of need to look at it through a reflection. And this is where the complicated part of shadow work starts to come in, because a lot of people say, oh, shadow work's just like, that's your anger or your witchy side or your dark feminine and all of this. And all this stuff's really trendy, okay? But the very fact that you know and have reclaimed potentially those parts, you're conscious of them, means that they're not in your shadow, love. The stuff that's in your shadow is stuff that you don't know about because it's unconscious to you. And a lot of what's in your shadow, as we've already seen throughout this podcast, is light and bright and beautiful and wisdomous, okay? And so actually working with someone who can help hold that mirror up. So when Perseus actually went in to slay Medusa, he knew he couldn't look at her directly. So he had to look at her through the reflection of his shield. So he had to kind of shine his shield around a corner and kind of like get in with his sword and slay her that way. He knew that he couldn't look at her directly. Very similar with shadow work. All right. So actually getting support and getting that guidance, whether it's me or work with someone else, but it's about really having someone who understands this intersection between spirituality, psychology, and obviously personal development's part of that too, but also somatic work. And I know we haven't spoken about that much today, but somatic work is a huge part of what I also teach in the PCA, because actually integrating and resolving our shadows on a somatic level is hugely powerful as well. All right. So people who you work with, so like, for example, you wanted to enroll in the PCA, we're going to go through this work together first yourself. So you actually get to experience, I'm going to coach you. And then, yes, you're going to learn all the tools and frameworks that I use. So then you can use those to go on and support your clients as well in your own coaching practice, whatever niche you're in. We work with people from angelic healers right through to corporate and executive coaches. So there really is no limit to who can benefit from this work. But what I would say is, if you're really serious about doing this work with someone who understands that intersection. Join the PCA. The link is obviously up and around here as well. The summer class is currently closed, but the wait list and list for the next round, which will be opening up in the autumn, is available. So all you need to do is kind of book a consultation call with me, and I can run you through all the information. We can get your deposit, and then you're on for the next round of the PCA, okay, which will be in the autumn, so September, October time. All right. Last thing that I wanted to say is also just really, I kind of want to say it again. It's like really embrace these deeper levels of healing. Okay, I can't kind of stress this enough, because time and energy is required to dedicate to this, and not just intellectual energy. It's all well and good, I think, to intellectualize shadow work or to get swept up in sort of the pop spirituality version of shadow work and the dark feminine work and all that. All that stuff's really cool. I love that. But sincere inner work, sincere shadow work requires a peeling back through the layers. It requires looking not only at the shadow parts, but also those other dynamic forces of our psyche that are sometimes in opposition to each other, like the ego, like the persona we spoke about. Then we can look at dreams and active, like the collective unconscious. There's all of these parts of us and the collective that interplay and intersect around, kind of informing our behaviors and results and all of that. So all I want to say is just get really committed to this. Start with journaling, start with doing that gut check, like I said, but really just getting curious to explore those deeper layers and confronting these parts of you as they arise, getting curious. And one of the real beautiful benefits of shadow work is that it stops you from living in this state of reactivity. And when you think about your business, it's so easy to make reactive decisions, to get pissed off when someone's done this or that, or to get triggered. And, business is a roller coaster, particularly in the day and age that we're in. You're going to experience emotion. You're going to experience the highs and the lows. You're going to have moments where you want to jack it in. I promise you, you will. But what shadow work, sincere shadow work and psychodynamics allows you to do is almost navigate life's challenges, including business challenges, in a more sane way, in a less reactive way, in a more considered way, in a way where you actually have true freedom of choice. And you're not just reacting based on past conditioning, past traumas and patterns, old identities that you're clinging on to, like the role of, the parentified person who then becomes the people pleaser, fixer, helper role. So you're actually coming at your business from the perspective of your whole and integrated self. What would happen, for example, if you didn't just have to show up as the one that was uber responsible, that had very sloppy and weak boundaries, that derived all of their value from the worth and the value and how useful they could be to other people? What if you could reclaim some of those shadow aspects of yourself, like your inner rebel? What if you could let your playful inner child run the show for a little while? What wisdom could you gain from welcoming those parts of you forward? And this doesn't mean that suddenly you become irresponsible and, rebellious, and you forget about some of the wisdom that comes with that role that you've learned. Because, that role's made you resourceful as hell. It's made you smart. It's made you really empathetic to other people as well. We don't want to lose that, but we don't want to be driven and led around by the nose from that anymore. We want to actually welcome in these other playful, fun, light parts of us too, and bring it together. This is what it's all about. It's about this journeying back to wholeness. This is the individuation journey. This is certainly the journey that we go on in the PCA, but also as I relaunch my mastermind towards the back end of August, September as well, this is what we're going to be doing in terms of bringing this work to your business also. So my mastermind is going to be launching, and I'm going to be teaching you absolutely a strategy so you can hit your first 6 figures in business. So we don't exclude the strategy at all, but we also do a lot of the shadow work too, okay? And a lot of the energetic and the healing work also, in order to kind of go back to and deal with some of this stuff, as I said, the disconnection, self-sabotage, the issues that you might have building relationships, et cetera, so you can actually resolve those at the root level before implementing the strategy. Okay, so I feel like that's the place to close. All right, I hope you found some real value from this podcast today. I've really enjoyed this one. It just felt like it's kind of channeling through. So I'd love to know your thoughts as always. You're very welcome to reach out, send me an email, amanda@lightpurposeliving.com. Share your thoughts with me about this episode, or obviously share it out with other people you think might find it useful. And definitely check out the PCA if that's calling you. Book your consultation call. What that will do, as I said, I can answer your questions about the program. You can get on the waiting list for the next round. We will take your deposit as well, which is a 10% holding deposit. And then you're locked in and you're ready, and you can get started even with the orientation and the pre-reading and all of that sort of stuff before we get started in the autumn. All right. Take care and look forward to the next one. See you then. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Big Talk podcast today. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please do leave us a review and share it with your friends. For further information about our programs and free content, head on over to lightpurposeliving.com. See you soon.